You opened an app today, maybe without even thinking about it. You scrolled past someone's vacation, someone's promotion, someone's body, someone's life. And for a moment, just a moment, something shifted inside you. A quiet ache, a small shrinking. You told yourself to stop. You've told yourself that 1,000 times. But you can't. And the reason you can't has nothing to do with weakness. It has nothing to do with vanity or insecurity or a lack of self-esteem. It goes back far further than that. It goes back to the beginning of what it meant to be human at all. Your brain is running software that is roughly 2 million years old. That software was not designed for happiness. It was not designed for contentment. It was designed for one thing only: survival. And on the ancient savanna where your ancestors lived and died, knowing exactly where you stood in the group was not a preference. It was a life or death calculation. It determined whether you ate, whether you mated, whether the group protected you when the predators came at night. Knowing your rank meant knowing your odds. And so your brain evolved to track it obsessively, automatically, constantly. Psychologist Leon Festinger first named this mechanism in 1954. He called it social comparison theory. His core insight was startling in its simplicity. Humans do not evaluate themselves in isolation. You have no internal, absolute sense of whether you are smart, capable, attractive, or successful. Instead, you define yourself entirely through comparison. You are always measuring. The only question is what you are measuring against. Festinger noticed something else. You do not compare yourself randomly. You gravitate toward people who are similar to you, close in age, situation, ambition. Your brain is not concerned with what the most powerful person in the world has. That comparison is too distant to be useful. What it cares about is the person one step ahead of you, the colleague in the same role who got promoted first, the friend who had a baby at the same time you did whose child is walking sooner, the classmate from your year who just closed a deal you were also chasing. Those are the comparisons that sting most, and they sting precisely because they are the most relevant data points your ancient survival brain can find. This is not dysfunction. This was, for a very long time, the correct response to the world. Imagine life in a group of 30 to 50 people. The size of a typical hunter-gatherer band, the social unit humans lived in for the vast majority of their existence. In that world, your relative status was everything. Anthropologist Christopher Boehm spent decades studying these groups and found that high-status individuals had significantly better access to food, mates, and physical protection. Your brain learned to monitor your standing the way your lungs learn to monitor oxygen, constantly, without being asked, without stopping. And so the part of your brain responsible for tracking social comparison never turns off. Neuroscientists scanning modern human brains have found that the medial prefrontal cortex, a region strongly associated with self-evaluation, lights up almost immediately when you are shown information about another person's performance or status. It happens before conscious thought, before judgment, before you even decide you care. Your brain has already run the comparison. It handed you the result before you knew you were asking the question. Now take that ancient machinery and plug it into a world it was never built for. For most of human history, your comparison group was your band. Those 30 to 50 people, you knew them all intimately. You understood the context of every single thing they had and did and were. If the best hunter in the group brought home more meat, you knew exactly why. You had watched him develop that skill over years. The comparison was painful, perhaps, but it was grounded in reality. It was honest. What your brain encounters today is categorically different. It is a curated, filtered, highlight reel distortion of thousands of people's best moments, delivered simultaneously, endlessly, with the emotional pull of direct social contact. Researcher Ethan Cross at the University of Michigan has spent years studying the psychological effects of passive social media consumption. His team found that the more people scrolled without interacting, just watching, just absorbing other people's lives, the worse they felt about their own. Not because those other lives were actually better, but because the brain cannot fully distinguish between a real peer and a performed image. It runs the comparison anyway. It sees the data. It updates your rank. You are a social comparison engine, being fed inputs it was never designed to process. The result is a kind of chronic, low-grade noise in the background of your mind, a persistent sense that you are behind, that you are less, that you should be further along by now. And here is where it gets stranger still. Because comparison does not only produce pain, it also produces fuel. Festinger's original research identified two distinct directions that social comparison pulls. Downward comparison, looking at someone doing worse than you, produces a short-term boost in mood and confidence. It feels temporarily stabilizing. Your brain registers, "I am not at the bottom." Upward comparison, looking at someone doing better, can either crush you or drive you, depending entirely on whether you believe the gap is closable. Psychologist Penelope Lockwood at the University of Toronto found that when people saw a role model who had achieved something they considered possible for themselves, they were not demoralized. They were motivated. The same upward comparison that makes you feel like a failure in one context makes you feel like a future success in another. Your ancestors used this exact mechanism. Watching The Best Hunter was not simply painful, it was instruction. If you watched carefully, if the gap seemed crossable, you learned, you practiced, you improved. Comparison was the engine of skill acquisition in a world without books or schools. It was how knowledge moved through a group. So the mechanism is not broken. It is ancient, and it is real, and in the right conditions it is extraordinarily useful. What has broken is the ratio of input to reality. The modern world has handed you a fire hose. Your brain was built for a drinking cup. There is a concept in evolutionary psychology sometimes called the environment of evolutionary adaptedness. The conditions under which a particular trait developed and for which it remains optimally calibrated. Your social comparison instinct was calibrated for a group of 50 people in a world where status changes were slow, visible, and grounded in shared physical reality. It was not calibrated for a feed that refreshes every 30 seconds, showing you the curated highlights of 10,000 lives. This is why telling yourself to simply stop comparing does not work. You are trying to override a mechanism so deeply embedded in your cognition that it operates below the level of volition. You cannot decide not to run the comparison any more than you can decide not to flinch when something flies at your face. The reflex fires first. What you can do is change the data you give it. Research by psychologist Sonia Lyubomirsky at the University of California. Riverside suggests that people who shift their comparison axis from external peers to their own past selves show measurable reductions in social anxiety and increases in long-term well-being. This is not a self-help platitude. It is a redirection of a real mechanism. You are not turning off the comparison engine. You are changing what it measures. Instead of measuring yourself against someone else's highlight reel, you feed it historical data about your own trajectory. Where were you a year ago? A month ago? Yesterday? The engine runs. It finds a gap. But now the gap is the distance between your past and present self. And that is a gap you already know how to close. Your ancestors compared themselves to the people around them because those people were mirrors of what was possible in their world. They were asking, "How am I doing relative to what this environment requires?" That was the right question. For the first 2 million years, it was exactly the right question. The world changed faster than your brain did. The mirrors got infinite. The environment became impossible to read. And so the brain that evolved to keep you alive in a group of 50 is quietly, persistently telling you that you are falling behind in a world it does not recognize, measuring you against people who do not even know your name. That moment today, when you scrolled and felt something shift, that was not weakness. That was an ancient intelligence doing exactly what it was built to do. It just no longer knows what world it is in. And neither, sometimes, do you.